Why would a project begin with the identification of stakeholders? Well, a project produces deliverables, it satisfies a client, it carries out the mission as dictated by the sponsor who issued the charter. And in the course of doing that, the project team will need to acquire resources, interact with a community of people who may have various interests in the outcome of the project. There may be people at different levels of the client who will interact with different members of the project team. So to make a long story short, the project team has to be aware of who are the players in the overall project arena. And those players are known as stakeholders. A stakeholder is anyone who has an interest in the outcome of the project. And some stakeholders may have an interest, but the interest may not be positive. They may not want to see your project succeed. Okay, so those are stakeholders that you must be aware of as well. And this information helps you to create your plan for interacting and exchanging information and engaging with the players in the arena of the project. But your communication plan and the stakeholder engagement plan must take into account those who are seriously interested in the project and have a large and significant power to impact the project one way or another. Okay, but first step, you need to know who they are. And here's an example of how that's recorded in a stakeholder register. What are their names, their position, the role they play, how are they contacted, maybe what are some specific requirements or expectations, how would they influence the project, would you consider them high power, low power. This helps you plot your strategy for working on the deliverables, ensuring the requirements are correct, and also running interference with those stakeholders who'd like to see the project fail. And believe me, every project has some of those. But once the project stakeholders have been identified, and this is often done either at the same time or just before the project charter, because the project charter includes some key project stakeholders, it's time to get an understanding of where they stand with respect to the project. And this is done using a stakeholder analysis matrix. This document is kind of skewed, but notice you have power on the left-hand column and interest on the bottom row. And you've got high, low power and high, low interest. Perhaps we can scale this down a little bit so you can see it all at once. The stakeholder analysis matrix is how you plot the stakeholders that you initially identified. And one reason you do this, just like risk analysis, high probability, high impact, a project manager can only keep track of so much. So the stakeholders you really need to pay attention to are those in the top right-hand corner, those that have very high power to impact your project, and they're highly interested in the outcome of the project. And those are the ones to watch and be aware of. And going through this exercise helps you attain that level of awareness. So at the very first stages of the project, you create a project charter, you identify stakeholders, you do some simple assessment to understand where they stand, and this gives you a better feeling of who the players are in the larger project community. And this is very important before you really get started, because you're going to be working, interacting, sometimes arguing, negotiating, and dealing with a lack of buy-in or pushback. So know who they are, and therefore you can be in a better position to plan to deal with all of them.